Aloha, my friends and family, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. And I have with me again a guest from previous episodes where we talked about intuitive animal communication, Miss Emma Jensen. And we
Hi.
are, hi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
I'm super excited as well. We just were chatting for like 30 minutes. I'm like, we got to hit record. I think we are both super passionate about this topic. So, aside from doing animal communication, Emma Jensen is also a human design expert. And so, what we're going to talk about today is really understanding human design at a deeper level. We're going to bring in the conversation around the authorities, maybe the gates, and as they relate to the different types of intuition and the chakra system. So it's a little bit of energy body intuition mixed with a little bit of human design, and the animals were already communicating with us anyway. As we started, we had a hawk fly by and we've got the puppy in the background. So who knows what will come up. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I also saw elk this morning and
Awesome.
a deer. So yeah, we're in good company today. I'm super excited to have this combo.
In Florida, I get armadillos and snakes. I get the armadillo.
I've never seen an armadillo, but they seem like they would be so magical.
Well, they're all about the healthy energetic boundaries because they have the hard shell on the back and the soft belly. So I see them a lot.
Oh, that's amazing. And I just want to apologize if you guys can hear lawn care in the background. For whatever reason, they're doing it this morning. So
it's part of the
real
show.
life.
Yeah,
Real life.
It's happening here too. You might get some sounds. So I want to invite you to start by just reminding us and just sharing with us, because some people on the show, maybe they are not even familiar with human design. Can you just give me a brief little summary of what human design is and the different types of human design?
Yeah. So human design is essentially the blueprint of who you are. It's your authenticity. It's who you are at your core. And the thing that I love about human design is that it pulls in so many different modalities to create this chart for you. So it pulls in astrology, it pulls in the chakra system, it pulls in Kabbalah, the I Ching, and it also pulls in things like quantum mechanics and genetics and astronomy. And so if you've run your chart, you likely have seen it and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like there's a lot going on one page. And it's because it's all this different information in one place that is the picture of who you are. It's your authenticity. It's your roadmap. So it's who you are essentially underneath all the different layers of conditioning that we have acquired throughout our life from childhood and caregivers and friends and family and society that has told us, well, you're meant to live life this way. This is how you're supposed to do it. This is how it should look. And so we start to say, oh, this thing that I feel inside me that feels really good and feels really resonant is actually wrong. And so we can start making ourselves wrong because the world around us is telling us that's not how it's meant to go. You're actually meant to do it this other way. And so we start to get away from our authenticity in place of what the world has said is acceptable and is good. So that's kind of what it is. And then when you run your chart, so what you need to run your chart is your birth date, your birth time, as exact as possible, because like I said, astrology, astronomy, it's where the planets were when you were born. So I've seen 15 minutes change like massive things in people's charts. So the more exact you can be on your time, the better. And then your birth location. And you take all these things, and there's lots of different places you can run your chart. You can just Google free human design chart, and there's so many different places to run it. And then you'll get to understand more of like what we're talking about here. And then there's different things within it. The first place I like to start, and most people like to start, is what's called energy type or type. And there's 5 different types within human design that you can quote unquote be or have, and also understanding that you have all 5 within you. So we all have all the types within us. Whatever is written on our chart is our most dominant. So the first type is called, well, it's just a type. One of the 5 types is called manifestor. And manifestors are about 9% of the population. And they have the biggest energy of all the types. So they're here to be the energetic leaders for the rest of us. Manifestors aren't meant to finish things necessarily. They're here to get things started and kick them off for the rest of us to have something to do. So there can be some big conditioning for a manifestor from a sense of, because of this really big energy, that they feel like they need to shrink themselves in order to make other people feel more comfortable. They need to apologize for their behavior. They need to make themselves smaller. And so recognizing that if you're a manifestor or a manifesting generator and you're feeling that, that's your conditioning. You're meant to be this very big version of yourself. The next type, and I'm just doing a very quick overview. So there's way more about all these types, but this just gives you kind of an understanding. So generators are about 35% of the population. They have the ability to have sustainable energy as long as they're engaging in things that they love and that light them up. So the generators and manifesting generators, because manifesting generators are a mixture of a manifestor and a generator. The generators, it's all, you have this inner body response that tells you yes or no about something. So open-ended questions are not helpful for generators or manifesting generators. If you are either one of those, you likely have had a very frustrating "what do you want for dinner" conversation in your life, because it's the wrong question. You need options. You need this or that, or yes or no, or multiple choice types of questions in order for you to truly know what you want. And some of the biggest things for a generator is that they come here really wanting to help others and feel like they have to do that in place of helping themselves, essentially. So they put everybody else first because that's what they feel like they're supposed to do in order to help people. When in reality, when you're not doing something you love, you're actually draining yourself of energy and the rest of us around you. Manifesting generators, like I said, are a mixture of the manifestor and the generator, also 35% of the population. And the thing with manifesting generators is that you guys have what I call squirrel or shiny object syndrome. You have lots of varied interests, and the amount of time you're interested in something can also be very varied, right? It can be days, it can be weeks, it can be months, it can be years, it can be forever. And so getting really comfortable as a manifesting generator that you may start things and not have the energy to finish them. And so it's also understanding when to walk away and giving yourself permission to walk away from something when it's no longer serving you. And then for a manifesting generator, some of that conditioning is people telling you that you need to focus on one thing. And that's actually not helpful for you guys, because you have these different energies and you have all these interests. You're the best type to multitask. So it's allowing yourself to go in all the different directions the way that you want to go. All right. Projectors are 20% of the population. This is what I am. And we are here to very much do life differently. We see things differently in a different way than others. So we see something or multiple things in a way that makes it more efficient, in a way that improves the process, that refines it, that makes it quicker and easier for everybody else. We're much more efficient. We do not have the ability to have sustainable energy, which is why we have to use this ability to make things efficient and not tell ourselves that, no, I'm going to be successful because I'm going to work long hours and I'm going to keep up with everybody else. We cannot keep up with everybody. Well, we cannot keep up with the generators and manifesting generators, because when we do, we actually burn ourselves out, we exhaust ourselves, and we get sick. And then we just tell ourselves that we're wrong and we're doing it wrong and we need to have more caffeine and all the different things. And so for us, we're really here to guide others. We're here to be the guide. We see others very clearly. And our biggest downfall, if you will, is the fact that we cannot see ourselves. And so when other people try to speak to us and tell us what's going on, we take it very personally and become very defensive, and we can't accept or we can't hear anything. And then it just becomes a whole thing. I always say, with the most love in my heart, projectors, we can be the hardest of all the types for many reasons. And then the last type is a reflector, and reflectors are 1% of the population. And they are the only type that can truly put themselves in somebody else's shoes. They are the only type that is really meant to, what their goal, or not their goal, what they're here to do is to be in the center of a community, of a tribe, of a family. And their job is to essentially reflect how we're doing as a collective. So if the reflector at the center of the community, the family, the tribe, the whatever, is sick and is trying to pull away and wants to live on the outskirts and is like, doesn't feel good, and they're not thriving and they're depressed or disappointed, that's a great indicator that that community is not doing well. They're not operating in the best possible way, which is why the reflector is sick. Now, if the reflector is thriving, they're like in the middle of it and they love it and they're participating and they're full of life, that's a great indicator that that community is doing well. And so the thing that can be the hardest for a reflector is feeling like they're not known for who they are, not being seen for who they are, because they just so effortlessly reflect the person that they're with or the environment that they're in, that they don't always feel like they're seen or understood or accepted for who they truly are. So that's a quick little overview.
Wow, thank you for that. I was smiling as you were talking because I have a manifestor and a projector in each of my daughters. And so the things that you were sharing were pretty much right on.
Yeah.
And I think that's useful information in, entering relationships. For me, parenting, understanding the differences between my husband and in my kids, and also relationships, how we receive information, how we sort of, in my words, process it, how we see the world. I love that in the very beginning that you shared human design is your blueprint underneath the conditioning. And as you were speaking, I was just like seeing the clairvoyance, seeing all the just the ways that the conditioning shows up energetically in our body and in our lives. And we joked before we jumped on here, if we could just all be perfectly aligned with our human design, like life would be so easy.
It would be, it'd be so nice. Yeah.
So nice. It would like if there was just this energy field you could walk into that just aligned you to your human design.
Oh my gosh. Whoever could create that would be a like billion trillionaire. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
But then maybe it would be boring. We'd just all be in utopia. I don't know. So, and also what was coming through to me that never came through to me before as you were speaking, this is probably a conversation for another day, but it triggered my interest in the relationship between the Enneagram and the human design, because the Enneagram personality types are often created from conditioning from your core wound and also what you're moving into. And so as you were speaking, I was just thinking about I could almost see the different types of human design and the personality types associated with that. But what we're going to talk about today is how it relates to intuition. In my course, I talk a lot about intuition, specifically body wisdom. And since human design is a blueprint of the energy body and the body, it's a perfect bridge to bring them together, because we talk a lot about somatic intuition, the different types of intuition, how we receive them, and then how we process them. Because then intuition is really an energetic communication pathway is what it is. And there are 4 common types. There's really more than that. I mean, some people could say there's up to 10. I talk about 6, but mostly 4. We have clairvoyance, which is sight. We have clairaudience, which is hearing. We have claircognizance, which is knowing, and clairsentience, which is feeling. And then the other 2 that, and I only talk about them because I experience them, are smell and taste also. Sometimes we can, be in a place where we smell something and it triggers a response or a vision of someone else or something else, maybe even related to our childhood, but then it gives us a vision of the future. And I've had that happen quite a bit. And some of you listeners may even, so maybe all of these words are new to you, but maybe maybe people have told you you're a super sensor or you're sensitive, or maybe you've heard it in those terms. And so if you are one of those people that has always felt a little bit more activated or triggered emotionally or energetically in your surroundings, this could be you. We don't have to use those fancy words, and we might not even use them the rest of the time that we're talking. But for those of you that are familiar, that's what we're going to dive into today. And I was thinking, what I was getting is that there's the bridge between the two, as you mentioned, is the authorities. And what you shared with me is that the authorities resonate with the 7 chakras that are in the body. So I talk a lot about the chakras. There's 7 in the body. There's more than that. There's 6 more outside the body above the head. Some people even consider the earth star beneath you. But there's the root chakra at the base of the spine, then the sacral, which is just below the belly button, the solar plexus, where all your vital organs are. It's the color yellow. We're going up the rainbow as we go up the heart chakra, the throat, which is all about speaking your truth, and then the third eye, which is your intuition, and indigo, and then we have the crown chakra above the head. And what you shared with me is that there are 7 authorities that resonate with the 7 chakras. And so what I have been learning about the different types of intuition is that I believe everybody has access to their intuition. I believe this is the way we're born. And if we understand what type of intuition comes more naturally to us, we can then learn to recognize how it's showing up in our life. Because I think that the word has been slightly misused and misunderstood. Some people will get very into the theory of intuition, which can sound a little overwhelming. And I want to speak to more how it shows up in the energy body. And if I think that this conversation, or my intention is for you to share your experience to help us map out and sort of understand and visualize the relationship between the chakras and the authorities as they relate to intuition, because the chakra system, based on where you have blocks and where you're really open, really help you tap into different types of intuition. So can you share with us what an authority even is? Yeah. What does that even mean? Because at the end of this, we may end up looking at my chart just to give those of you watching this on YouTube a visualization. But what is an authority? What does it mean? Why do we even need to pay attention to it?
Yeah. Oh, so good. So on your chart, there'll be something that says inner authority, and inner authority is all about how you best make decisions. And whatever is listed on your chart is going to be your most dominant. So just like I said, we have all the types within us, but we have a more dominant. So I'm, as a projector, that's my more dominant. And you can have multiple ways of making decisions. So I love that you just pulled up your chart, because I look at yours and you have technically like 4, but really 2, right? I'm going to take the 2 most common, or the 2 most dominant. And those would be the ones that I would focus on for you to be like, okay, keep in mind these 2 things as you're going about making decisions. And as you said, there's 7 different inner authorities, and they don't all line up exactly with each of the chakras, but we'll walk through them and we'll kind of go through quickly, because you may have to keep me on task too, because I can go off and I can go for this for a really long time. But we'll go through them quickly so that you can kind of understand what's going on in your own chart. So grab your chart and kind of we're going to look at the body graph and walk through it that way. So the most common of all of the different inner authorities is called emotional solar plexus. And your solar plexus, if you're looking at your body graph, is the triangle on the right-hand side at the bottom of your chart. So for you, Jen, it's undefined or white. And when you have this one defined, it's the most dominant inner authority that anybody can have. And so what this means, if you have this as an inner authority, is that you need at least 24 hours to make a decision, which can be difficult in this society, because I know most people value making decisions in the moment. But for somebody who has emotional as their inner authority, you need at least 24 hours, because there's different things at play. One of them being this decision wave of how you go about making a decision. And partly there's divine timing that you're meant to get on. So the wave that you're going to go through is this like high yes of the wave. That's like, oh my gosh, this is the best decision ever. I can't wait to get started. This is going to be like change my life. Let's like do this right now. Like, how do I get started? Let's do it. And then you flow into this no part of your wave, which is like, oh my gosh, can I do it? Is this a good idea? I don't know. Like, can I afford it? Is it the right time? Like, am I the right person? Is this the right person? I'm not so sure. Maybe I shouldn't do it. And then you flow into the neutral side of your wave where you're not really yes about it. You're not really no about it. And it's from this neutral part that you then take into account whatever else is going on in your chart. And then you can use those other things to make the final decision. Or if you don't really have anything else going on, you go from this feelings place and you have to discern, is it a yes or is it a no from this neutral place? And then the second most dominant is sacral, which you do have, which is the second square to the bottom, which has in your chart, number 5 is defined. And if you are a generator or a manifesting generator, you have this as part of your authority, whether your inner authority says emotional or not, because this is what makes a generator or a manifesting generator, is this center defined. So when you have sacral, if you have a defined sacral or your inner authority says sacral, it's going back to what I was saying about you having this visceral response, your body response. That's a yes or a no. That's how you're meant to make all of your decisions. Is your body telling you yes, or your body telling you no, or your body not saying anything, which is like a magic 8-ball saying, not right now, try again later. And it's just saying that's not like, you're not on the right time. Like I can't give you an answer right now. Try again whenever, next day, next hour, next week, whatever. And so the best thing you can do if you're a generator or manifesting generator, because it doesn't matter if you're emotional or not, this is like paramount for all of you, is getting in touch with how your body tells you yes and no. It can be a feeling. You might feel excited. You might feel lit up. You might feel contracted. You might feel cold. It can be noise. So you might say, yes, that sounds exciting. Or like, oh, that sounds terrible. Why would I ever do that? Or it could just literally be sounds that come out of your mouth. Or there can be movement. So you might lean in closer to somebody or to something. You might lean farther away. You might nod or shake your head, or you just may get up and start doing the thing or walking away from the thing. And so it's getting really in touch and aware of how your body is naturally responding to the world around it. And if you're not sure, you can ask or have somebody ask you like hell yes and hell no questions to start elicit this response within you. Because a lot of times we've all shut this down in different ways because the world said, no, you need to have reason. You need to have logic. You need to have an analysis for why you're making this decision. And I love it because one of our former mutual coaches literally says, this is her reason for something. She says, oh, my sacral said yes. My sacral said no. Like that's how, like that you're meant to get to that kind of acceptance with your body so that you can literally just say it's a yes or it's a no without feeling like you have to give reasons, because you likely know somebody, whether it's in real life or in a movie or a show or whatever, where they follow their quote unquote instincts. They follow their intuition. They follow their gut and nobody questions it, right? They're like, oh, yeah, so-and-so's gut's always right. So we just go along with it. They don't ask that person, why did it say yes? Or why did it say no? You have that ability within you too. And that's where you're meant to cultivate it. So that's the sacral. And then when you go across the chart, one more. So, and I'm going in from the most dominant to least dominant.
Which is actually kind of from the root up. So that kind of, we're moving from the bottom of the chart up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so if we go to the left, one more to the next triangle, that's the spleen center, which I know is not an actual chakra within the chakra system, but it's our survival instinct center within human design. And our spleen center. So even though your inner authority says sacral, you still have this as a way of making decisions. So the spleen, and when I say you, I'm talking to you, Jen, not to like the general you of the audience. I just felt like
I have an inner, what did you just say? I have an inner.
So your inner authority says sacral. And you still have this, like what I'm about to say about the spleen center, like being splenic inner authority, you have this also. Your sacral is just the most dominant.
Which is related to intuition.
Exactly.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the spleen center is another place where we can naturally say instincts or intuition, even though all of it is intuition and instincts and information. It's just a matter of how we have defined what that means in our society. And so where the sacral gives you a yes or no response to things, the spleen gives you full sentences. So the spleen is something where if you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you feel, you hear, you think, you know, you whatever, that you should turn right when you normally go straight, that's your spleen center. So maybe you turn right and you miss traffic, or you run into somebody you haven't seen in a while. Or if you're me, you see the elk, or you see a hawk, or you see deer, or you see like some kind of animal. That's usually what happens for me. But there's something that's down that way that you're meant to go on that path, go on that route, go on that scenic, whatever detour in order to obtain that thing. The same thing will happen if you need to make a decision. It's going to give you the like full sentence thing about it. It's not going to just say, yes, do it. It might, but it's going to be like, don't tell them right now. Think about it for a second. And like in 2 days, yes, it's going to be the right time. Or it could say, you know what? The way that it's structured, it's not a yes right now, but if they restructured it in this way, then it's like a definite yes. And like, I want to move forward with that. And so your spleen's going to give you like the full sentence, the full package, and it's going to give it to you. It's the quickest inner authority that we have. The sacral, like I said, can give you that try again later. The spleen's not going to give you a try again later. The spleen speaks to you once. It tends to speak to you once in the moment and doesn't tend to repeat itself. Now, this is where we take what resonates and what doesn't, because for me, I am somebody who tends to need lots of signs about things. And I find that my spleen speaks to me a lot of times to say, hello, like, did you not hear me last time? I said, do this, or I said this, or whatever. And so I find that I do get nudges along the way if I don't listen to it right away. So the spleen, again, the difference between the spleen and the sacral needs something to say yes or no to, and it can only say yes or no. And the spleen doesn't need anything to happen, and it's going to give you full sentences. And then when we move up the chart, there's this small little triangle that's kind of off to the right-hand side a little bit. That's the heart center, the will center, and that's the ego center. So if you are somebody whose ego is your inner authority, it's really all about what is it that you want, right? What's going to make you feel powerful? Not what's going to make you actually powerful, but what's going to make you feel that? What's going to make you feel like you can take on the world? What is it that you actually want? What's going to make you feel good about yourself and life and all the things? That's how you're meant to make your decisions, is by really allowing yourself to tap into that part of you of what is it that I like? What will make me feel like this next higher version of myself? What's going to make me feel really good? And allowing yourself to make that decision. And then moving up.
Did you say that was that? What is that authority called?
Ego. Ego authority. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Heart center. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So the heart center has lots of names, which is one of the names is ego center. So that's where the ego comes from in the inner authority, is that one of the names of the heart center is the ego center or the will center. There's so many names. So it could be really any of those kinds of authority, but yeah, it's all about tapping into, if you take anything away from it, it's like, what will make you feel powerful, and allowing yourself to go with that, whatever that decision is.
It's like the energy of the solar plexus chakra. So
yeah,
very, very much. And it's in that area.
That's where it becomes a little bit difficult. I tell people who know chakras really well, and they come to human design, I'm like, oh, loosely associated. They're not like completely the same. So don't,
Well, actually what I love about it is it makes the idea of the chakra system, it removes that idea that it's linear, because nothing really is anyway. And it makes, so as I'm seeing it, it's taking the energy and just making it very fluid, because as you're speaking, I can see how it relates to the different chakras and the different types of intuition. We're not looking at something that's linear like we usually see the chakra system. You've got the first three that you discussed are actually a little bit kind of more horizontal, and then we finally started moving up for those of you that are not looking at this visually. But but I love that, because to me it's like, I mean, we don't live in a linear world anyway, really. And so, but we're used to seeing that visual with the chakra system. So this is allowing it to be more fluid. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So the heart centered is the ego authority. And then the next one is kind of yellow on my chart. What is that?
Yep. So the yellow center on your chart, or the diamond in the center of anybody's chart, is the identity center, or the G center. And this is if your inner authority is self-projected. So self-projected authority is going to mean that you have this identity center defined, and none of the other centers that I've talked about defined. So your heart center, your spleen center, your sacral, and your solar plexus would all be white. And you would just have color from the top up. And so this self-projected authority changed my life when I learned about it. I don't have it, but it made so much sense for so many people in my life. And this is all about speaking. It's all about having a sounding board. So it's understanding that for you to understand what you truly want, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, all the different things, you need to speak it out loud. You need to have somebody.
Is that common for manifestors?
It's common for anybody who has this defined.
Okay, because my manifestor is like this. Like, she tells me she's going to the bathroom. I'm like, everything.
Well, no, that's actually her strategy. So her strategy is to inform, right?
Oh, okay.
And so I mean, one of our mutual friends, Leah, her son is also a manifestor, and she's like, he's informing me about all, like, going to the bathroom. All, she's like, I don't need to know that. And I'm like,
so that's different than the self-projected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because so for her, right, she's not saying things out loud to understand how she feels. She's just simply telling you what she's going to do. She made the decision that she's going to go to the bathroom. And so she's like, hey mom, this is what I'm doing. She's living very true to herself. Manifestors are not meant to ask permission or ask questions, because that can be really frustrating for them or irritating for them, because they've already made up their mind. They've already gone through all the different things that could happen or not happen or whatever. And they've gotten to this conclusion. And so when people ask those questions that they've already run through, it can be very irritating for them, because they're like, I've already figured this out. Like, stop asking me dumb questions that I've already, like, of course I've flushed it out. Like, this is my decision. And so she's just living very true to her strategy. Yeah.
So the self-projected identity is they're here to learn to speak their truth. Is that what?
Not necessarily. Okay. It's just that they need to have a sounding board. So it's important for them to have a person that they can say, I don't need you to talk. I don't need advice. I don't need feedback. If I do, I will ask you for it, but I really just need you to be here in order for me to sort through what I'm thinking, to process the different things, to understand, for me to hear essentially what I actually think about things. And so for self-projected, you may feel like, I don't have anybody to do that with. I don't feel safe enough to have somebody that's not going to, like, do that. And I totally get it. I've definitely been the person that was, like, trying to fix things until I learned about this. And I was like, oh, I now understand what was happening. And
so as you're speaking, I just want to interject for a second, because it's so interesting. And I know this is a lot for people to take in. And I just want to, for a second, intertwine conversations that I have on here about the top limiting beliefs that we see. And just before you said the words, I wrote the need to be safe. Yeah. So, like, I'm just noticing that with each of these types of authorities that are either defined or undefined, there, as you said in the very beginning, this is everything underneath the conditioning. And then if we have, it's almost like we probably create experiences that allow us to try and strengthen and get back to this natural blueprint. So we create these experiences that write these stories of our conditioning: need to be safe, need to be loved, need to be worthy,
Yeah.
or that feeling of hopelessness, the need to be heard and seen, which you said was related to, I think, the sacral chakra. But
Yeah.
you've been speaking about all of these core limiting beliefs that show up for a lot of us as part of our conditioning and part of these authorities. So I just want to invite the listeners to also pay attention to the words that she's using in those terms, because we can oftentimes relate to the underlying conditioning that is also happening. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there as you were speaking to it. So you're sharing about the self-projected identity maybe doesn't feel safe speaking in front of people.
Yeah. So a great way that you can do in order to, if you're like, I don't have anybody that I feel safe to do that with, is even just like taking your phone and recording yourself on a voice message and just allowing yourself to talk and to speak through things. And if you don't feel that you find or hear the clarity or whatever during that, then to take the time to listen to it back and see if like there's things that pop out at you. And so there's going to always be ways for you to live your trueness, your authenticity, your design in a way that's going to make you feel safe at first. So it's all about awareness. And I am a full proponent of like, sure, like you want to go against yourself, do it. Like, please do the thing that feels right, even if it feels wrong, because that's going to give you so much awareness and courage for the next time that it comes up and you being like, you know what? I did it the other way last time. This time I'm going to try it this way, because what do I have to lose? And that's how we can start to build our trust muscle with it feeling safer and without feeling like we have to make these big changes and take these big leaps when we don't feel ready to do them. Allow yourself to feel ready in a way that maybe you're already living. You're just bringing that more conscious awareness to it. So,
yeah, and then I just want to remind people in the very beginning, what was the first authority? It just skipped my mind. The
solar plexus, emotional.
The emotional authority was like, I need that 24 hours. The sacral authority is really listening to the body, wisdom. So there's like all of these different ways that those of you that are listening, if you choose to so you can get your chart done for free online, but this is why it helps to have somebody read this to you so you can really understand it in more depth. And you can start to understand, this is really awesome, because even just listening to you, you can start to understand more about like, what is that subconscious programming that's happening for me? How is it showing up in my energy field? And you start to realize that part of it is just the blueprint that you came in with. And so then we also created these experiences, or we had these experiences that are allowing us to kind of exercise those muscles a little bit. And like you said, you were just talking about the identity authority. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to do it this way, and maybe it was wrong this time, but I'm going to try it another way next time, which for other authorities, the experience would be quite different to do it that way, to do it wrong and to do it right. So it's going to be like, we make choices based on our authorities, but the experience is very different based on our authorities as well.
Yeah.
So
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what's the next one after the self-projected?
So, and I just invite everybody to do life that way too, of just like bringing that awareness to your everyday life and how you're already doing it. And how does it feel for you? What's the outcome? And so that can help you make changes too. All right. The last two. So the next one, it doesn't really define it. There's not a lot of definition that necessarily comes with it. So the next one is, it depends on where you pull your chart, but it's a mental projector. And so it usually says none. It'll be your energy type will be projector, but your inner authority will say none. And this is specific to mental projectors. It means that you only have a throat, an ajna, so the top three centers within your chart only those will be defined. So whether 2 of the 3 or all 3 are defined, that's like what makes a mental projector. And so for mental projectors, it's all about feeling, tapping into how do you feel in that environment with that person. What
It
does that
sounds like the total opposite of the sacral.
Yeah, totally.
Like
I mean,
energetically,
well,
I'm seeing it and it's like, well, the sacral's in the body, and then this one is like not in the, it's very much up in the upper. You're saying feeling, but you're not talking about the feeling of the body. You're talking about like more heart feeling when you say feeling for this one.
yeah. So I mean, it's still tapping into your body just in different ways, right? So this one is really about how, like, does this opportunity, do these people feel good to you? Does it feel like it's light and exciting, or, like, just how does it feel within your body? Do you feel calm? Do you feel super erratic? Like, how do you feel overall? That's going to determine where you go with it. So if you don't feel good, then that opportunity is not right for you, or it's just not the right time. The environment you're in is not right. So it's always, as a mental projector, tapping into how you feel, which could be an actual physical feeling, or it could be more of an energetic feeling. It just depends on who you are. And I know I would love to be able to look at somebody's chart and be like, well, this is how like your visceral response shows up for you. This is how your feeling feels up or shows up for you. And that's just not the case. And so it's really, again, bringing that awareness into your everyday life and seeing how things go, tapping into how you feel and tracking it if that feels good to you, and saying, okay, this is how I felt, or this is how I thought I felt, and this is how it went. And oh, okay, maybe that's not how I felt, or whatever the case may be, so that you can start to awaken it. Because the thing that's difficult for the mental projector is that you're very mental, right? You're very in your head about stuff because that's where your definition is within your chart. And so it's being able to pull yourself down into your body to say, how do I feel? So that's the big thing there. And then the last authority is for reflectors. And so reflectors all have the same authority, where the rest of us can have different ones. And reflectors, their inner authority is really kind of their strategy, which is waiting a lunar cycle. And so just like I talked about for the solar plexus, how they're meant to wait 24 hours, which can be difficult, a reflector is meant to wait a 28-day lunar cycle before making any bigger decisions. And so that can be really difficult, though when they live true to their design, they're like right on course. I have a couple reflector clients that will come back a month later being like, yep, I needed a month. This is what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, like that's perfect. That's perfect. Like that's how you're meant to go through life. And so as a reflector, that 28-day cycle isn't static, right? It's not passive. It's during that time that you then start to explore. You start to ask people questions. You start to research. You start to just go through whatever that decision you're about to make and learn about it, and ask people's perspectives and feedback and different things. And you'll find that throughout that 28-day cycle, you likely will find clarity. Whether you find clarity 10 days into it, or you may not find clarity until you're 40 days into it. You may need multiple lunar cycles in order to find that clarity, but it's giving yourself that time and space, because so many reflectors have basically given up their decision-making process or ability, power, to somebody else, because it's just easier for somebody else to make the decision. But then they tend to find that they're like just always disappointed in the decision, because it's not actually what they wanted to do, because they didn't have the time to really go through the process to feel how they actually wanted to do it. So those are the 7 authorities that you can have within your chart.
So what do you, and thank you for all that, by the way, and what do you, like, what are some common themes around, like, when you say your visceral response? To me, I think of energetic communication, which is intuition is a means for that. What when we take the 5 human design types and the 7 different authorities, like, do we ever see kind of themes that show up? Like, is the last one we just talked about, the reflector, is that typically like a reflector type, or can it really mix and match anyway?
Yeah. So there's a lot of mixing and matching, I guess, within when it comes to authorities, besides the sacral, because the sacral is always going to be a generator, a manifesting generator. That's always the case. You guys are always going to have a visceral response, whether you have an emotional wave or not. It doesn't matter. You're always going to have this visceral response. So I guess the theme would be generators and manifesting generators always have a visceral response, and reflectors always have to go through this cycle of really finding clarity, where the rest of us, we can have so many different things going on in our chart. That's not like projectors are always splenic or always ego or always emotional. I mean, half of the population is emotional. So whether you're a generator or not, half of us are going to have this emotional wave, this emotional decision-making wave that we're going to have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just getting to know, and I'm such a proponent about learning about yourself, because it's so much more than just learning about yourself, because in learning about yourself, you learn that there's these different ways of things being, and you learn, oh, you not only give yourself compassion, but you also start to look at the people around you with deeper compassion, deeper acceptance, just like I was saying about the self-projected, that I used to get very frustrated with people because I'm like, I'm trying to help you. I'm giving you these solutions and you keep cutting me off. Like, that's really frustrating, and you're not appreciating me. And then there's a whole projector thing in there too. And then when I learned about this, I was like, oh, and now I'm able to have all of these relationships in a much purer way, because I'm able to see them, whether I know their chart or not, in a much more individual way of being like, oh, they likely are not exactly like me. They likely, have a motivational wave, and they're not motivated all the time. They don't have like they don't have consistent willpower. And so why am I getting upset that they're not able to keep up with me going to the gym every day? Like whatever the thing is. And so it's such, when we were talking about how, the world would be a better place if we all could just like live into our designs more, because leaning into our own design brings such acceptance, love, and compassion to everybody else around us. And so
it's like aligning to our blueprint. It's our
Totally.
energetic blueprint. And
fully.
yeah, whatever I was going to say slipped my mind, but that's
Yeah.
okay. I would say that one of the biggest benefits of this, aside from what we're learning here today, is definitely in relationships. Like, it's almost like the 5 love languages, but in the energy sort of dimension, right? Like, it takes it a little bit deeper, because to me it ties in like those limiting beliefs, that shadow work, because we can start to see energetically like where we have to find centers. And so as I'm hearing you speak, and I'll just use myself as an example, as a manifesting generator, and I teach body wisdom. So if I have a defined sacral, I'm teaching the very thing that if I live what I teach, then I will be more aligned to it. And I shared with you before this an example of a decision I made where I didn't listen to my body, and I was getting migraines, and it ended up not working out for me. So that's just an example that I can speak to, because I can see I'm understanding my chart more clearly. But if manifesting generators and generators have defined sacral centers, then you're somebody who, if we have shiny object syndrome, well, what's the antidote for that? Take a breath and drop into your body, and just ask your body, like, what is, what's happening there. And that is clear sentience, by the way, is really the feeling. So when we talk about the different centers, we start to notice, the different types of intuitions that come through. When you were talking about, I was writing all this down, it's like so much to take in, but when you were talking about, I think the third one, maybe it was the splenic, or that, anyway, you were talking about like something comes in a clear sentence. Well, there's a little bit of clairaudience there, because we're hearing the message, as it's coming through. Let me just check the time real quick. We probably have about 10 more minutes. I want to invite you to just I know. I think we could talk about this. There's going to have to be a part
There's
two.
so much to talk about. Yeah.
There really is. And what I really want to help the listeners on this show to understand. So we've given you all an understanding of the types of human design. We've given you all an understanding of the types of authorities,
Yeah.
the 7 authorities. And already that's like a course or a book in itself, and how it relates to our energy body. Many of you who listen to me this podcast a lot are familiar with the chakra systems. I kind of interweave it into anything, everything. So
Yeah.
you can kind of understand a little bit how this is more of a spatial, sort of non-linear energetic system blueprint in the body. Tell me about, should we open up the conversations about gates, or is that going to be, okay, tell me what a gate is.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about it because there's a couple that I want to point out. And then there's something that I think would be helpful to talk about, because we've just been talking about it quite a bit, about voice and using voice and different things, and what human design kind of can lend us in that effort. So gates are the numbers within the centers, which the centers are the shapes. And all of the gates essentially are traits and characteristics and energies that we can have access to. So any place that we have definition or color, so whether it's a gate, so if we're looking at Jen's chart, you have gate 64, gate 4, gate 63, gate 17, gate 51, 26, 40. These are all defined gates, right? They're all colored in. They have color coming out from the number. If we looked at gate 61, 47, 24, 43, 11, those are all undefined gates. There's no color coming out of them. And I point that out because all of the places that we have color, whether it's a gate or a center, are the places that we're meant to lean into. It's the places that we have consistent access to the energies, traits, and characteristics within that center or that gate. And all the places that we're undefined, whether it's a gate or a center, and so the centers being the white centers, are the places that we have inconsistent access. And so things that we're not meant to really grab onto and say, like, we're supposed to have this all the time. And so the gates, I would say, just on the basis of the intuition kind of conversation, is there's a couple gates that just pop out at me as just like having pretty clear kind of intuition attached to them. Gate 61 being in the head center being one of them, because gate 61 is all about inner knowing, and just, you know what you know, and you don't know how you know or why you know or anything like that. And also understanding from an undefined perspective that all the places that you are undefined or white are the places where you're taking in the outside world and others. So we experience the entirety of a chart, regardless of what your chart looks like, in the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, depending on how often and you're interacting with different people and whatnot, because you're going to take in what they have that you do not, and vice versa. So even if you don't have some of these gates, but you're like, oh, but I feel like I do, you may be around people who also have it, and then they're lending that to you on a day-to-day basis or whatever. So it's just something else to look at. So gate 61 is all about inner knowing. Gate 57, which is down in the spleen center, is all about hearing. So you're just talking about clairaudience, and that gate 57 has that clairaudience attached to it, and it has psychic abilities attached to it. So there's this intuition side of it that's really able to see the future if you allow yourself to be in that side of it. And then another one that I like to talk about is gate 19, which is down in the root center, which is sensing the needs of others, which can have this very clear, the feeling clairsentient to it. And so being able to like really feel people, and there's different ones in different places, but those are the ones that like really kind of pop out at me. And so there's 64 gates. They also line up to the I Ching. And I mean, that would be a whole thing in itself of going through what those all mean and all the different things.
Yeah.
But that gives you an idea that they're different traits and characteristics and different things. And there can be fears attached to some of them and whatnot. And we're not meant to live in the fear of them and all the different things. So if there's specific gates, you can, I'm sure, Google most of them. And that's something that we could do also if people wanted a session. But as far as voice goes, because we've been talking about this a lot, whether we're recording or not. So this is where you're going to look at the throat center. And the throat center is the first square if you're coming down from your head. So it's the third center down from the head. And this tells you obviously like, right, how you're meant to use your voice. And so you can have your throat center defined or undefined. Defined meaning it's colored in, and yours is defined. So when you have a defined throat, you're truly here to use your voice in a subjective way. So you're here to use your voice to speak your truth consistently. You're here to speak what is true for you consistently. You're here to use your voice in a way that is about you and telling your truth and your story and all the things that feel true to you. And then you can also look and see what your throat is attached to, what other center or centers it's attached to get a better understanding of what you're here to use your voice for. And so for you specifically, your throat is connected to your identity center, and your identity center is all about who you are, where you're going, your true sense of self. And so you could look at that and say, oh, like you're really here to like speak to people about identity and who you are, who they are, helping them find who they are, where you're going, helping them to find direction, and all the different things that can be associated with that. Now, when you have your throat undefined or white within your chart, then you are somebody who's here to use your voice in an objective way. So you're not necessarily here to advocate for yourself in a consistent basis. So I'm not saying do not advocate for yourself. That is not the message at all that I'm saying. It's that you're not here to do that all the time. You likely, if you have this undefined like I do, and I've had this experience so many times in my life, that when you say something that's not an objective thing, right? So if you say, I feel bad when you don't do the dishes, that people tend to take that a lot harsher than how you mean it. And you're like, why are you getting so upset? Like I just said that I feel bad you didn't do the dishes. You said you're going to do the dishes and now I don't feel good because you didn't do the dishes. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, why do you have to blow it out of proportion? It's not that big of a deal. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, where is this coming from? And so it's realizing that the more that you can be, and this is hard, so I understand this, but the more you can be bird's eye about this and like really speak from an objective way when it comes to yourself, the better. However, you are here to advocate for others. You're here to use your voice to advocate for others. That's where it's super.
Like you and the animals.
I know. It's like me and the animals. Like it's 1,000%. Like it comes off easy for people. It's how you're meant to consistently use your voice all the time. And so for me, I know I've had people tell me like, oh, you need to like tell your story. You need to speak your truth. Da, 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 da. And it's never really felt true to me or resonant to me. And there's a lot of times where they're like, oh, well, is that because of fear? Da, 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 da. And so like, I've had to dive into that. And it's really doesn't feel like it's from a fear perspective. It just like doesn't resonate because that's not how I'm really here to use my voice. Now, when I'm here to use my voice to like help others see themselves or to communicate with animals, like that feels really good. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. But when it comes to me, myself all the time, it doesn't feel as resonant. And so just allowing yourself to see it differently. And because especially when you're in the personal development world and spiritual development world, you can get a lot of people telling you like, you need to tell your story and you need to do it every day. And you need to tell your audience all these different things. And if you have it undefined, that likely doesn't feel good to you, or maybe you're not getting the same reaction that some of your peers are getting when they're telling their story. And it's likely because that's just not how you're truly here to use your voice all the time.
So would you say that what would you say your dominant type of intuition is? Is it clairaudience?
For me, it's seeing. That tends to be my most clear, and then audience is my second for sure. Yeah.
And for all the listeners, all of these skills can be developed. I mean, it's like we have all of them all the time.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is, well, I speak of it in terms of chakras. You're helping me understand it as it relates to human design, but where we have openings and blocks tends to be how we're receiving our intuitive information. So
Yeah.
the throat chakra is very much linked to clairaudience. The sacral chakra is very much linked to sentience, more feeling. The third eye chakra is more connected to the clairvoyance. I feel like I'm forgetting what. Yeah, I don't know
Cognizance.
yeah, that's a little bit more solar plexus. So, but it's really just because it's a knowing, right? It's like that confidence knowing.
Yeah.
So it's important to also understand when your chakras are out of alignment, um, and when they're blocked or when they're open, because it affects the way that we receive and perceive and interpret the energetic communication that we're receiving. And the conversation on human design is helping me to understand that it's like I have defined energetic pathways that are already there. Am I using them or not?
Yeah.
And what is the conditioning that's preventing me from being in alignment to the blueprint? So what is the belief that shows up? Is it the need to be safe, the need to be seen or heard, right? Because that's going to be linked to, like, it, as you, again, using me as an example because that's easier for me to relate to, but I have a podcast because you just said, like, I'm here to speak my truth. Well, that's what I'm doing on the podcast, and it's really healing for me. And I just want to, because I have a background in holistic health and functional medicine too, I want to just share this little tidbit. Like, when I was health coaching, there was like an epidemic of thyroid crisis that was very much related to women either choosing or not choosing to speak their truth, also related to trauma and the sacral chakra. So all of it is intertwined with each other.
Yeah.
It's just amazing when you really start to understand all the components of the energy body. You can really start to unravel and understand the reality of the world that we're really living in, and understand that everything is a frequency, and we're just all aligning to different blueprints at different times in different places. Like, it's all fluid and moving. So yeah, you gave us a lot. You said gate 61, clairvoyance, gate 57, clairaudience, gate 19, sentience. Did we talk about the cognizant gate? Or I'm guessing it's probably down a little bit further.
Cognizance is knowing, right?
Yeah, so it's probably one of the
gate 61 is gate 61 is claircognizance. It's that knowing, right? Because that gate 61 is inner knowing.
Yeah, so that like needs no explanation. That needs no, it just is, and you know it. And
it just is, yeah. Clairvoyance, I guess that's the one we didn't talk about, is can be gate 64 and
that's
gate 47. Yeah.
That makes more sense to me. Yeah, the 61 is the inner knowing. That would be the claircognizance, which is just like, you know the answer to things and you don't know why.
Just know. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the 64 is the clairvoyance, which is sight. So oh my gosh, this is like, I'm like, so
okay, so I just want to say one more thing. Just one more thing, and then I'll cut myself off because this can be an opening to so many things. But because you kind of brought it up about the thyroid, and I love that you look at the different blocks within the chakras, because you can do that within human design as well. And all of the centers within human design are associated with different organs in different parts of the body, the throat being associated with the thyroid and the parathyroid. And understanding that when you have physical ailments, that it's an indicator of a center or centers that are out of alignment. And within human design, because the physical ailments, because it's physical ailments, I guess, it tends to take longer for them to manifest. So if you're having these physical ailments, it's likely because this center has been out of alignment for a while. So I love it because I'll just give a really quick example, and then I'm cutting myself off. But because I see this so prevalent with so many people, the sacral chakra, or sorry, you keep saying chakras and now I'm the sacral center within human design. If you're out of alignment there, which many of the non-energy beings are, and even some of the energy beings, is you're going to have issues with your reproductive organs and your digestion. Yep. And I know as a projector, I definitely have, because I'm like, well, I'm supposed to keep up with the world. And I've had ovarian cysts that have ruptured. I've had digestive issues. I've had no period. I've had irregular periods. So I have definitely experienced that. And I'm able to look back at that and be like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like I can see where all this has like kind of happened and all the different things. And so that's just another place where like, I love to be able to talk to people about it, because just getting to hear their physical issues and then being able to say like, oh, how does it, like, does this resonate? And they're like,
Totally.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
to go on top of that, there's emotions that resonate with each of the organs in the body. And many people who have listened to my podcast for a while know I've done workshops on subconscious reprogramming and the divine healing work that I do. And so by the time dis-ease or illness is in the physical body, yes, it is an old program, because it comes into your field in the astral body first, then the energy body, then the mental body, emotional body. When it gets all the way down to the physical body, it's talking really, 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 really loud to you. And it's been there for a long time. And also understanding that some of that is generational. Some of that blueprint some of that energy was already in your field when you came in, and it's could be generational trauma. And then it's like and this is another conversation, but we either sort of choose to transmute it or we choose to absorb it, I guess would be a word to speak to.
perpetuate it. Yeah.
And so so the same thing with the chakras I talk about. It's the reason I kind of left health coaching, because I started realizing, I mean, I still intertwine health coaching, but it's just such a small part of our well-being. We have this energy body, emotional body, mental body, and physical body, that when we can really understand emotional programming is very deeply rooted all the way down into our physical body. But then when we have these energetic blockages, because if you think, well, what is dis-ease in the body? It's stagnation. That's all it is. It's acidosis or stagnation. And so the same thing happens in the energy field when it's blocked. It's the stagnation of the energy. And if that stagnant energy has been stagnant for so long that it starts to plant a seed in your physical body, well, then it's really time to listen. And I just I would say most of what I see, it's why I have these colors in the back, is for women right now is the throat and sacral chakra. And there's something happening in the collective right now where we're really being invited to transmute whatever trauma or negative energy is associated with the sacral chakra, whether it's a lack of abundance or creativity or joy, or there was some type of trauma there that created a block. Right now, collectively, I see a lot of people being asked to transmute that up to the throat and speak it, whether they're speaking for somebody else, like you're doing in human design or animals, or speaking their own truth, or just, but again, how we started this, well, this wasn't on the recording, but, we were having a conversation before this just about, listening and being aware to what is going on around us and to other people, because whatever works for me isn't going to work for Emma. Like, we have different charts. We receive energetic communication in different ways. So it's, it's like we think of tangible things, like not one diet works for everybody, not one love language works for everybody. Well, this is the same thing. So the way that we receive energetic communication, intuition, and the way that we make decisions is going to be different for everybody. And it doesn't mean that somebody this is a big one in the intuitive community. People think that clairvoyance is like the ultimate type of intuition. Well, no, they're just all different. And really, you're just transmuting them. So I used to be very, very, very clairsentient, and I just got exhausted. I was so exhausted feeling everybody else's stuff that I was able to learn how to transmute that into clairvoyance and to clairaudience, so that I could more stand back and see and listen rather than feeling and experiencing anything. And a lot of times what that takes is understanding probably what your authorities are and how you naturally respond. It probably, some of these other things here that are on my chart could be really helpful, which we're not going to get into today, but my strategy is probably my profile. All those things probably help me understand how I respond to things that are when I was very clairsentient and very much in the energy of being an empath, and I know that's where a lot of people are that are listening right now, is that they're very new to the empathy, really getting super clear on like, what is the underlying need? for you to have other people's experiences. And I did a podcast on the wounded badge of empathy. Because if you're new to this, understanding all of this, you're likely feeling frustrated, exhausted, tired of being tired. You don't understand. How come I can't communicate clearly? Why can't I manifest more abundance? Why am I not in my dream job? It's probably how you're feeling. This is a tool that can help you to learn how to trust yourself.
Oh my gosh, fully, and be able to really step into that with conviction and determination and without guilt. And that's why,
100%.
right? That's why I was talking about how, sometimes you have to go against what your body's saying because your mind's saying to do it something differently. And you have to do
or
it
vice versa, or the
yeah,
other way.
right. Like you have to do it whatever way that feels good in order for you to build your trust muscle. Like there's more than one way to build a trust muscle. It's not always trusting that your body's giving you the right information. You may say, I don't trust my body at all, and I'm going to do what my mind tells me to do. Great. Do that and see what happens, but make sure that you're being conscious about the outcome and about what happens so that you can take that information for next time. And then next time you're like, you know what? That didn't actually go as well as I wanted it to, or I thought it would. And so I'm going to try it this way this time. And just to go back to the clairsentient thing, just really quickly, it makes so much sense because your solar plexus is undefined. You take in the emotions of other people and amplify them. So it makes sense that was not only exhausting and overwhelming because you don't feel it at a 1-to-1. You feel it at like a 4-to-1 kind of situation. And so allowing yourself to like take that step back. And I fully believe with the clairvoyance thing, which I'm just like, no, like we all have our own way. There's not one intuition. Like there's so many intuitions. And I see that a lot in animal communication where they're like, oh, well, I don't see it or I don't hear them. So I must not be connected. And it's like, no, I know plenty of animal communicators that just get a feeling or they just know. And that's just as accurate as somebody who's able to see them or to hear them. None of them are wrong. They're all right. And so it's allowing yourself to really come to terms and acceptance with the ones that you have and becoming grateful for them, and then allowing yourself to deepen into them and just like allowing yourself to like let that guide you to wherever the next thing is. And so, yeah, this was so fun. Thank you.
And I think we could just easily go another hour, and maybe we will. But one more thing, just a closing thought, and then I just want to ask you what would be your one nugget of wisdom as we close. But as we're speaking to all of this, like we start to understand that every authority, every human design type, every type of intuition that we use, there's always like a gift and a shadow to it. So as you just explained, my emotional authority is open. Is that what?
Yeah.
So I was taking it in and amplifying it. And although what happened in my experience is that it was, I learned how to turn that into clairvoyance because it was so overwhelming for my physical body that it started to break down. Like I was starting to feel, I was losing vitality. So I had to do some of my own inner child. There was a conditioning that was a belief that was amplifying something, and I wasn't using it to my fullest potential as a gift, if that makes sense. It was holding me back because I was exhausted. But when I started to learn the conditioning that was triggering, activating, and amplifying this authority that is amplifying, then I started to be like, oh, okay, now I see that I had this conditioning, that this need to be seen or heard, that allows me to see and hear others very, very deeply. And on the other side, I have this it's easier to be in somebody else's pain than my own. Those were the two things that were showing up for me. And when I understood that, it's like I could take a step back and I could see the energy coming in. And then it's like I just shifted it and transmuted it up into clairvoyance and clairaudience. And that took me, my own kind of personal shadow work is how it happened for me. It's different for everybody. But I say that to say that the conditioning is part of it. So when we started this conversation, you said this is your blueprint underneath the conditioning. And the reason that we're out of alignment with this is because of the conditioning. So when you can understand what your blueprint is and you can see your conditioning and you can see your limiting beliefs, you can start to live in more energetic alignment and more flow and understanding and ease and grace and compassion for relationships for other people. So it's why it's such a great tool. So thank you so much for sharing. I just want to invite you, before we go, please share your website. I'm going to share the link. Share what your offerings are, and then lastly, what would be your takeaway, your nugget of wisdom to just leave to plant a seed for the listeners.
Oh, so good. And thank you so much. This was so fun. And I couldn't have imagined a better conversation with a better person. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so my website is www.connected-consciousness.com. My Instagram is at EmmaJ04. And I offer sessions with people for human design. I offer packages because one session is not going to give you everything. And so if you're really wanting to dive into whether it's yours and your children or your partner or whomever, we really can dive into that, because that's one of the things that human design was really put out into the public, not only for us who are adults, but for the unborn, for the children, so that they could be raised in a way where they didn't have all these layers of conditioning that they would have to decondition from. Of course, we're always going to have some conditioning. That's the human experience. However, we don't have to have as much, right? The projectors can be raised in a way that's not saying you need to keep up with everybody else. You have this different gift. Like, let's cultivate that, and let's give you one-on-one time. And for the generators and manifesting generators, it's saying, let's find the things that you love to do and really pour into those, and not say, well, no, you're supposed to do this or you should do this. And so we're going to force you to do that. And so it's really just looking at those different things and seeing how we can really support our kids, our children, into being the people that they already are, and not expecting them to have the same kind of experience that we do or we did, and wanting to support that. And I know that kind of happened with my family. I was raised by two manifesting generators and I'm a projector. And so very different kind of ways of being. And then,
yeah, I have a daughter that's a projector, and this has just so helped me. Sorry, right. You've helped me understand too. And she's an Enneagram 3, her love language is quality time. And she's the one that's on the US surf team. Like, when she gets focused, she's it's amazing. So you've helped me to understand. I just back off. She does her thing, and go ahead, keep talking. Tell us where else we can find you. It just helps us as a parent. I would just say it's helped me. My manifestor is an emotional manifestor, and she's the dancer. So it just helps me to understand. I don't make it about me. I don't take it personally. They are who they are. It's just another tool that really, 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 really helps with relationships.
It's amazing. It helps you understand the other. And when it comes to a partner, you get to say, yes, I want to support this. Like, I can accept you for who you are, and I want to support you in that, and vice versa. Or no, like, I cannot. I as a projector, no, I cannot keep up with you, generator or manifesting generator. If that's your expectation, then this isn't going to work, because you're just going to get really frustrated with me and I'm going to resent you. And it's going to be this whole thing. Right. And so there's not a compatibility thing. It's just a matter of, can you accept and support the person that you're with, and vice versa. So I would say, I guess the one piece of thing, there's so many, but it's just knowing that this is already inside of you. You already know, you likely already have a deep resonance for what feels good for you. And it's not allowing yourself, your mind, your analysis, your whatever, to override that feeling, because that feeling's there for a reason. And it's really, it's asking you to cultivate it so that you can reconnect back to that authenticity that you already have within you. It's just maybe hiding a little bit.
Awesome. I still have so many questions. There's so much coming through right now. I'm just so excited about continuing this conversation, because I can yeah, I'm starting to recognize patterns, which is part of intuition, and just seeing how it so relates how we show up in our life and what our basic human needs are. It's just so there are so many just things that are coming through that validate this. Like my projector always says, slow down, like don't rush me, as a 3-year-old, right? Like now she's 12, but like she can't keep up with me and the manifester. We're just
No.
like multitasking here and there. And she's like, wait, she's like, you asked me to do one thing already.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing. Yep.
Oh, yeah. So what I think I want to leave the listeners with is, this is just such a great tool. It's such a great tool. Like Emma said, you already have the wisdom within you. This is a tool that helps you to access it, to understand it, to trust it, whether it's and everything in life is a relationship, whether it's the relationship that you have with your spouse, your kids, your work, your body, food, the pandemic then we're in, emotions, fear, whatever, everything is in relation. And so this is a tool that helps you to understand how you show up in those relationships and how you can navigate decision making, and also just witnessing others, and I think in their experience, right? And yeah, it's just so great. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the listeners that are still hanging on. We're going to drop those links in the show note on where you can find Emma and her offerings. And yeah, just thank you to everybody who stayed on to listen. Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you.